we're lucky to have Hendriksen to come and talk to us about a happening in Australia's history. And Gay has a long history of work in museums and galleries as director and curator and educator. And I won't go through all the different galleries and museums in which she's worked, but I'm sure you recognise them. And now she is running a business called the Rowan Tree Heritage and Cultural Services, and she is president of the Parramatta Female Factory Friends. And she will tell you a little bit more about that and talk about the petition that they are currently to collect signatures for. She's specialised in women's history within the Australian cultural heritage and researched and developed 50 art, cultural and social exhibitions from colonial times to the present, and covering 5 states in doing so. She's won national and state awards for the Women Transported touring exhibition and accompanying publications, which presented the largely untold story of Australia's convict female factories. So she's well qualified to tell us about the particular riot we're going to hear about today.
I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the people of the Eora Nation, and they'll obviously be elders past and present. But I think today it is really about a different set of elders that I'll be sharing stories with. First of all, can everybody hear me? No. This is a short microphone, tall person. Is that better? I might lean in like this for the duration. I'll try. But look, just put your hand up if you're not hearing me for some reason. Is that okay? Does that work for you? Okay. I'll do a little juggle as I go. All right. Okay. Before I start, I will actually mention the Parramatta Female Factory Friends. And what, for those of you who may not know about the Parramatta Female Factory, you'll certainly know about it by the time I walk out the room. But the Friends have been going since 2010, and the first thing that we did was save a computer data room, which happened to be the third-class sleeping quarters 1820s, from being made inaccessible for people and being destroyed in one way or another. And since then, we've managed to have a successful national submission for heritage. It's on a list now that it will actually be considered in terms of being on a national heritage list instead of not being recognised at all. But in our current government climate, it really is a case of we're very concerned about its future. There are lots of plans. No plans and lots of plans are always a problem for heritage, but when you've got lots of plans that include development that's inappropriate, then which I can tell you more about later if you like. But that's something that I think that really needs to be looked at. We've also had a petition of over 10,000 to State Parliament to ensure that there's support for World Heritage. We now have, and that's a petition up the back of the room, we now have one for the federal government asking them to actually make an application for World Heritage. And it's absolutely critical for this site. This site is actually the model for every other female factory that occurred in the country. And it predates all but 3 World Heritage sites of convict history in Australia. So really important. And the earliest surviving female convict site. So it's again another one of those women's stories that needs to be acknowledged and recognised for that. But I'm talking about something in particular today. It's going to be easier if I come around here. You still hear me? Hopefully? Okay. All right, so I am going to be talking about a particular event, but I will give you some context for that as well. So I'll be talking about what has been called the Female Factory riot, but also it is the first women's workers' riot in Australia, 1827. Has anyone heard of this riot? No. This workers' action? Isn't that unusual? Yeah. Okay, well you will. And not just the first women's action, the first action that's been recorded in Australia for women's rights. But I'm going to leave the decision to you after you've heard what I have to share as to whether you think it's a riot or you think it's a workers' action. Okay. So I'm just working out how to connect. Am I just connecting it? Does that work? No. Okay, this isn't going to work. I'm wondering if I can. Yep. What is a female factory? What's part of the journey of the women? Then I'm going to talk about the evidence for this female factory event, and then I'll look at, was it a riot or was it not?
Excuse me. Could you ask her to speak up a little bit? Just speak a little bit louder.
Better?
Speak a little.
Okay, I'll speak louder and I'll try and speak louder into this. Sorry. Okay. It doesn't seem to want to come from here. Sorry. I'm wondering if I could ask you to do I can do that might be easy. Just yell. Okay. All right, we'll keep on moving. So I think it's important to remember it's a very personal story. It's not just about the fact that there were 24,000 convict women who came to Australia, that over 5,000 went through Parramatta. When we drill down, it is each of these individuals and individual stories going through. And I always think there's a quote that came through my family through time in the Female Factory woman, and I think it gives you a sense of what it was like for those women. And she used to sing this little song. She'd go, "Ahone, ahone, ahone," and that's misery, misery. "I'm weeping and wailing and doing what's not pleasing. I'm rocking this baby that's none of my own. Ahone, ahone, and why did I marry? Ahone, ahone, and why did I wed? I'm weeping and wailing and doing what's not pleasing. I'm rocking this baby that's none of my own." And I think that just starts to talk about the life of the women and how it really isn't their particular experience. Now, if I can just get you to keep clicking a little bit further. What we're looking at now are some of the places that these women came from. So just keep clicking. Keep going. So you're seeing rural experience. When we're looking at this period of time, we're looking at where there has been the Industrial Revolution, there's been the Agrarian Revolution, Social Revolution. It's been such a time of absolute change for those women. And this is some of the experiences that they would have gone through before they even started. And this is what they're going to be extricated from. Next slide, please. It is a personal story. You're not just talking about affecting one person. You're talking about a whole family and a whole community. And I think it's really important to bear that in mind. Next slide, please. Okay. When we're looking at the prison system at the period of time that these women came out, it was appalling. You get John Howard, who was looking at all the prisons in England at the time, and he wrote about all his observations. And I'll read 3 short quotes from him, which will give you an idea of what these women, okay, they have been caught, but they're in these prisons. You know, at Gloucester County Jail, he says, 8 died at Christmas, 1788 of the smallpox. No separation of the women 5 or 6 children have been born lately at the jail. Then at Fokingham, the prison is under the keeper's house, 5 damp rooms, 2 are used for a lunatic. By a trapdoor in one of these rooms, you go down 8 steps into a dungeon. No chimney, so there's no warmth. Small court, no pump, so that means no water, no sewer. Can you imagine that? Yet a woman and a child at her breast was sent, and the child died. That's what he's saying. And then Old Newgate, some of us might have family histories that the members passed through Newgate. He says, constant seats of disease and source of infection to the distraction of the multitudes, not only in prison, but abroad. So you get his observations, then you get Jeremy Bentham making other assessments of the different prisons and coming up with ideas. But most importantly, next slide please, most importantly, you have Elizabeth Fry. Now that bottom right hand image is Elizabeth Fry reading the Bible to the women at Newgate Jail. Now some of you might know that she and her Women's Committee did a lot of work for the convicts, but it was beyond that. She informed convict systems out here, and she was responsible with her planning for the Parramatta Female Factory and for other factories as well. Okay. Now she had an enlightened approach. She looked at the idea that women would go through the court system, they'd be in jail, but all they needed was an opportunity for some kind of training, for some kind of reform and some reflection. So work and reflection was her answer. And there was some enlightenment in that approach, I think. However, this was not shared by the government out here. This is a picture by William Turner. It's the Amphitrite. I don't know if any of you know of that story, but just briefly, that was a story of over 120 convict women. They didn't even get outside the English Channel. They could have been saved on 4 occasions, but because of prejudice, they didn't survive. You've got that fearful journey. You know, they're not just being transported from one town to one other town, or from one country to another country. For them, it's a whole different universe. It's a whole unknown. And for some, it might be exciting, but for many, it was a really fearful thing. And then you're travelling across the world in this small ship, they're calling it ships, but you know, slightly larger than our ferries. It's a very, very difficult thing. So down the bottom you've got a small image, the Neva. That was in Bass Strait when it foundered, and you had 120 women on board and 6 survived. But then you get the good stories. Up the top we have a small ship called the Morley, and there was a fabulous surgeon superintendent, and he actually protected the women. He gave them encouragement, and the women, before the end of the voyage, gave him a letter and said, we really appreciate what you have done. And they signed this letter saying thank you. But the colony is different. Wonderful pictures. We're not getting any of the words of the women. You'll only get those in the trial. We're not getting images, by women. We're not getting any voice from women. What we're getting is cartoons and attitudes to the women. And when you're coming out to Australia, coming out to what is Colonial New South Wales, Governor Hunter is saying these women are at the bottom of every infamous transaction in the colony. Every infamous transaction. Samuel Marsden, who becomes important within the Female Factory, he says they're a grand source of moral corruption, insubordination and disease, and they spread their pestilential influence throughout the colony. That's the attitude to women. When I did that exhibition on Transported, I could find only 15 objects in our national collections that related to these factory women. I go back, there were 9,000 in all the factory systems, less than 15 objects. So when I thought, oh, well, I'll find some images, surely. But until the women are free and photography has been invented, it doesn't happen. So what I ended up finding was 2 images of factory women, which are the 2 central images you're looking at there, and they're cartoons. And one that's actually a man being a woman. So you're getting that approach. It's government use. So, what is a factory? Which is part of the story. I can move to the next one, please. This is some of the places the factories were. So it wasn't just one factory, there were 13 factories. So they were all over the country, wherever it was settled. There was a major area where there was a factory. It was a factory because they didn't do factory work. We're going to Parramatta. They're the gates that will greet you. This is the first, and this is the factory I'm talking about. There was an experiment in Prince Alfred Park at Parramatta. That was a room above the jail where you had 200 women fitting in a place that could take 30 at night. This factory was then built by Governor Macquarie. It's a building that's also been designed by Francis Greenway. And yet, how many have been to the factory? Okay, how many have been to Hyde Park Barracks? Okay, Hyde Park Barracks, 1 year earlier, rubber site. This is same architect, same governor, good story. It tells you about it. So you're going in these front gates. Next slide, please. This is what greets you. Major building in the centre isn't there anymore, but on the side you've got buildings that still exist. It wasn't just a prison. It was, in some ways, it was like Centrelink. It was a place for assignment, a place for work. And then that work was out in all parts of Australia. So these women are going out and making the Australia story. Yeah, we don't think about that. The first women's health service was in this site. So it was a hospital site specifically for women. There was a barracks where the women came, a shipload of women would come, and then they would be in the factory till they're assigned. There was a penitentiary aspect, and these are those pestilential women, that some of them were criminals. Some of them really did do nasty things. But of the women transported, over 90% of them were first and second time offenders. And those that went to the third class quarters also included people who absconded, running away because they're treated badly on assignment, or they're pregnant. So these are these pestilential women.
Okay, can I just say, my ancestor, 6 white napkins she smelled. 6 white napkins.
And then you get 7 years. Is everyone else who's got any connection to the female factory? Fabulous. Okay, I'll be interested in those stories later. So you're getting some of the idea of it now. 6 white napkins and a life's changed forever. When they get to the factory, the kind of work they're doing is spinning and weaving. They're also doing knitting, they're also doing straw plaiting, unless, of course, you're third class, in which case you would be doing, this is what we see on the side here, is tarred rope, so it's called oakum, so picking oakum. So you pick oakum or you break rocks. So your next trip to Parramatta, when you're walking down the streets of Parramatta, I want you to think of these women because that rubble went into the roads. But that's what they would have done. That's why it was called a factory. Okay, now the next one. Stop there for a second. Okay, so was it a riot? Was it a workers' action? Let's start looking at the evidence and look at the people involved. In the factory, you had Marsden, who people either loved him or they hated him. He was responsible for improving the conditions of the women, but he saw them as dissolute. Next one. This is George Mealmaker. He was the first superintendent of the first factory, and he was one of the unnamed martyrs, Scottish martyrs. You're aware of that. So he's actually governing people that his rights he was speaking out for. We keep going. Next one. Okay, you've got Francis Oates. He was the first superintendent of this new factory. Next. Matron Gordon is going to feature in our story quite significantly. She was one of the matrons. Next. Sisters of Charity. I'm sure you would know about work of the Sisters of Charity in Australia even today. They started their work by coming to work with the women in the female factory. They understood them. They advocated for them. they fought against the priests for them. One of them ends up in Tasmania because of what she did, Sister Xavier Williams. That's this one that we're seeing here. The only object we could actually say specifically factory was given to her if we could only find it. I'll tell you about that later. Then you have the daughter of Francis Oakes who ends up in a factory in Tasmania. Then we'll keep going on to the next. Okay. So, 1824, I want you to imagine this matron reign starts at the Female Factory. In 1826, William Tugwell, who's one of the workers there, reports issues with food rations. The records of rations were not verifiable and the women did not appear to be getting enough to eat. The matron Elizabeth Flynn and her husband were implicated in the corruption to do with the factory. I do believe that matron Ryan tried to do her best, but she was surrounded with a difficult family. Then, in 1826, Mary Ann Hamilton dies of starvation at the factory. Her death was found to be from hunger and hard treatment. And I'll tell you a little bit of what came out of the coroner's inquest. John Eyre, the coroner, asks a man called William, who's the master manufacturer, are there many complaints? Yes, there are many more complaints now made by women under my charge than ever had some time ago. Have the women ever said to you that they were under any restraint of complaining? Yes. Can you name anyone? Catherine and others, whose name I cannot recollect. Several women have repeatedly made complaints to me that they're not able to do their work owing to their weak condition, that they wanted more food. Even if they were getting their proper portions, they'd be getting half of the men's. Then the coroner's notes continue. There is a cause for the complaint and manifests by their appearance. The same persons were formerly strong and healthy, and he knows of no other cause. He sometimes diminished the quantity of the work assigned them because of them being so weak. Then Margaret Jackson, who's an assigned servant, noted that the dead woman, that's this Mary Ann Hamilton, who died of starvation, she was confined in the cell without any bread or water. And Catherine Hazelwood, this dead woman, a constable from the factory. He says, ill treatment and corruption. He's empathetic to the diseased situation and to the deceased. She died from hunger and ill treatment. She was so hungry that she was picking up bones and weeds from within the factory. Francis McNamara, another constable. There is a cause for complaints of the women. These women were formerly strong and healthy. The deceased applied to the deponent before she died for a flax wheel and said she steamed flax well if he would apply for a little more food for her. The wheel was sent to her, but she wasn't able to spend much. So, if you think in this factory there's only 5 women in charge of 250 women, they're not getting their feed, the women are getting half the men's rations. The result was an inquiry.
Sorry, I think I have something to say over here.
Sorry, I'll keep going. Right, okay. Is that, it's better, isn't it? Yep, sorry. So there was an inquiry. The grand jury visits and finds the rations unsatisfactory. 253 women and their children have no access to a water supply. The bread was inferior, they're short of clothing and they've got no shoes. There's excessive punishment, there's fear of head shaving and there's the neck yoke. This is what they're dealing with. Okay, have the next slide, please. This is matron Borden, and she'll be quite important in this whole process. We'll keep on moving. Next one. Okay, I'll leave it with that for the moment. So, the women. A sample of the women, there were 2 women, one's called Anne Entwistle and the other's Mary Hindle. They were both sent out because they were rioters from Lancashire because of the breaking of the looms. There were 1,000 people on that riot and only 9 were sent out here and only 2 were women. And they were transported for participating in the machine breaking. Now Anne Entwistle went on to have a good life, but Mary Hindle didn't. She left her daughter behind and her husband, and she sent a petition saying, I hear that pardons have been granted to the men involved in the crime of machine breaking, and I humbly implore your excellency to include me in the number of those who have received the blessing of such clemency. Do not suffer me to languish the remains of my existence in hopeless slavery. She never received a pardon. There was a note on her form saying never to be released, but she did get assigned. She was in and out of the factory and she ended up committing suicide. So you're getting that kind of situation. So let's now get to 1827. Next slide. We've got corruption in the factory, the rations and clothing. The matron's son is having liaisons with the women. Throughout the year, there's a rise in punishable behaviour in 1827. There's absconding, there's disrespect for the matron, disorderly conduct, there's insolence, there's refusing to work, there's neglect of work, there's quarrelling. The highest ones are abusing the matron, absconding, so trying to get out of the situation, refusing to work, and insolence. In March, the unrest starts to escalate, and Dr. Henry Douglas, who was then the superintendent of the factory, he was assaulted by 6 of the women and wrestled to the ground by one of them. In September, Matron Rain has had enough and she decides that she's going to resign. So she puts in her resignation and she says the situation has of late become very irksome. So we get to October, we get to the week starting the 21st, and the factory is really a hotbed of unrest. But 13 women stop work and they refuse to do any more work until their rations are returned. So this is not the actual event, but this is the first stop work, you might say. The matron Rain responses reduce the tea and sugar. So half the ration, let's get rid of the tea and the sugar as well. I'd probably revolt if I didn't get my tea. But Matron Rain then keeps those women locked away. Wednesday the 23rd, the women in the third class riot. They take over the yard and they expel the constable. Friday the 25th, Rain advises the constable that she expects some rest. She's assaulted, but she's rescued. Saturday the 26th, Matron Gordon has her first day at the Female Factory. She has a call for the muster at 7 a.m. So this means not just third class, all the classes. And she says, I'm stopping the allowance of bread and sugar altogether. So the bread is one of the major parts of their diet, bread being another main part. So that's just too much for the women. They threaten to tear down the factory unless the rations are reinstated immediately. Okay. I might have the next slide, please. Okay, so what happens is the women start to escape. Somehow that amazing matron Gordon entices them all back in. But she says, no, I'm not doing anything about your rations. So then it is on. They're described as these 200 viragos attacking the workmen with hammers and sledges. They break down the gates and they go through the town. They're described as Amazonian banditti running through the town. And then there's a description of the police and the military running in all directions. And I mean, it's a very humorous report, except for the fact that they're starving. They're only breaking down places where they can get food. And these 40 sergeants have bayonets and they are told that if they cannot quell the women, they're to kill them. They have to be ready to commence firing if necessary. And yet I haven't seen this in any of our history books. So, after they're trying to chase the women up around the town of Parramatta, they're seen going in all directions. The regiment, 57th Regiment, charges towards all the surrounding hills, bugles going to try and prevent the women from escaping. They're doing marching up and down all over the area. Many of the women are captured and escorted back to the factory, where Major Lockheed, the superintendent, decides he wants to get the ringleaders. Well, this is when the rioters all band together, and we talk about the mateship of the Australian people, and we talk about the larrikinism, and we talk about what strength of character. then you think that this comes back to these women. These women stood together and said, if one suffers, all suffer. We're not offering up who the ringleaders are. And I think to me that's really a sign of mateship that really stands out. Okay, so after the riot, 100 is still missing. The rations are restored. By 31st of October, there's still 19 at large. By the end of December, they've found some of the ringleaders and they're sent to Newcastle. It takes towards the end of December for the last two to be found in a settler's cart 150 miles away. What happens in the factory? Harder conditions, people still being mistreated. One, Joanna Lawson, for instance, from Granada, is given a month on bread and water. So, what did the government have to say about that? Almost nothing. One sentence in one letter from the governor, there was a disturbance at the factory. So that's how it was described. Okay, the next slide. Okay. So, was it just a riot? That's been a question that people have been arguing probably for the last 150 odd years. At the time, there was one journalist who described his view. He said, the scenes were witnessed at Parramatta last week. They were attributed to anything we find but the true cause. It was not fanciful classifications that the outages occurred. It was the fact that the female prisoners would rank themselves as Amazzoni banditti, that they were the most abandoned character, and they were confined for the purpose of punishment and example. There is no establishment in the colony under a better state of discipline than at the factory. So, they were just rioters, of course. The second journalist says, after the scenes which were witnessed at Parramatta last week, it is tolerably evident that the internal economy of the factory requires looking into. The government can know nothing of the arrangements in force or the arrangements for the receptacle for hundreds of unfortunate women who otherwise could not have taken so much by surprise what had happened with the factory. The escape of 200 confines, the poor wretches who forced their way into the town complained of nothing save starvation. So when you're looking at this situation, you have that divide which still exists today. I would suggest to you that this was a workers' action, and it was a fight for basic human rights as well. And I think, to my mind, one of the best descriptions when I think about these women, because I think these women are really just you and me in a different set of circumstances. And I think that actually Kate Grenville says it really well when she says, there's not a single joy I could feel that some other Joan has not felt before me. Not a single mistake I could have made that some other Joan has not made before me. I am the entire history of a lawyer walking down the street. And I think we really are that history. And this is part of it that we need to reinsert back into our story and the story of our children and the story of our country. That really is what happened at the factory. So that's the info I'm going to share with you about that story. But I think in terms of actually considering what the site currently means, that's something where I think we really need the help. We're really looking at the fact that the Parramatta Female Factory is a symbol of us and of our identity, who we are. And currently, it's part of, I just love this description, it's part of what's called the Peanut Plan, Parramatta North Urban Transformation, and it's being developed by UGG, which is urban growth. And it really is a peanut plan. There is we're talking, now I want you to imagine Hyde Park Barracks if you haven't been to the Female Factory. Imagine that, and imagine multi-storey buildings inside that footprint. Then I want you to imagine maybe directly outside the building, 30 to 40 storey buildings, when there's at the moment there's 3 or 4 story buildings. And what's the adaptive reuse that's going to be made for this? Is it going to be a boutique hotel or perhaps a nice shopping centre? Within that, those residential areas, of which there'll be at least 3,900 units, there's no talk of affordable housing. So we're looking at the fact that we really feel that the female factory is in danger, and the only way to save it is to have some kind of mandate that is state and federal, so that fight amongst themselves, and we get more money, and that it is World Heritage. Because even though you can lose World Heritage, if you get it, you can promote it, and you can promote the stories and share those stories. And this story of the riot or the first workers' action is just one story. There are so many more stories to be had. So that was the end. Yes, I did briefly to start with. So if we're looking at this, if you could sign this, we'd really appreciate it. If we get 10,000 signatures, it goes to Federal Parliament.
Is the petition going online?
We have an online one as well at change.org, and the online will go to Parliament as well. But the 10,000 written signatures is one that is immutable. And if we get the 10,000, it will have to be discussed in Parliament. So that's what we're aiming for, it to be discussed in Parliament and to actually have this World Heritage. So it can be interpreted.
How many signatures have you got so far?
Well, we've only had this one going a few months, but we're up to about 2,800. So what we're hoping to do in the next 6 months is to get it up to the 10,000. We've got another 3,000 online. So if you put in Female Factory into change.org, you'll get to the online one. But this is the one we're really hoping to do. You can get that petition online as well.
So we can print it out.
So you can print it out. So it's Parramatta Female Factory Friends.com.au.
We should have a stack of them printed out at the library. Yes.
That would be fabulous. I mean, it's unbelievable really that the stories of this place are not told. If you look at the fact that if you multiply the numbers of women, 9,000 who went through the system at one time or another, you've got nearly 1 in 7 Australians being related to these women. It's a huge story, and it's one that really needs to be told. And one of the things we're also doing as Female Factory Friends is we're putting in a new vision for the site, which we're calling Museum of Australian Identity, which will cover the whole of the North Parramatta precinct that is defined in the Peanut Plan. But the jewel of that will be the Parramatta Female Factory, and looking at all stories about our identity, the Aboriginal stories, the migration stories. This is a forced migration story. We don't have a Museum of New South Wales, but this story is bigger than New South Wales. It's a national story.
I was going to ask what the alternate plan would be for the use of the area, and are there definite ideas?
There are not definite ideas. They're talking about, well, there are definite ideas to have the tramway going through. There are definite ideas to have 3 core development sites directly associated to the borders of the factory. There's a plan for a community come shopping centre area. There's a plan to reuse the factory, but we don't know what the plan is. So they're not defining it enough. This is our chance to say this is what it should be. This should be a place that everybody can walk through. There are currently 2 interpretations on the site for the bats, for the bat colony. It should be a museum, but not one that is very interactive, one that really where you can walk through and you can engage in those women's stories.